Hi, Joe Banye for Empower Athletic Development. In this video, I'm going to share with you a really simple exercise that I use to refocus or reorganize my ideas when it comes to training, both myself and my clients. The goal of this exercise and the goal of this video is to really help coaches to prevent from becoming too distracted by other training methods or training ideas. With so much information available to us online, and so many opinions being shared, it's easy to become distracted, to program hop, when you're training yourself, or to begin to incorporate other methods into your training when you're training your clients too soon or at the wrong times. At the end of this video, however long it's going to be, hopefully you can you'll be able to learn an exercise that will make it very clear what you feel are the most effective training methods per training goal, sport, age, whatever it may be. And it'll also allow you to get a better idea of when or how or if it's appropriate to incorporate new methods. Because I don't want trainers to become so closed-minded that they stick to their own approach all the time. Organizing your ideas in this way will help you identify a new idea, categorize it, see if it fits at the right time, whether you're training yourself or training your clients. But you have to understand, you have to learn first how to categorize, to identify requisite capacities, and to categorize exercises, to place exercises underneath those umbrellas of requisite capacities to understand whether or not that new idea is appropriate. I hope that clears up what I'm trying to say. All right. So, what I do per sport, per goal, what I like to do is create these a simple matrix, exercise matrix, requisite capacity and exercise matrix. This is a personal example. Right now I'm really working on my Olympic lifts, specifically clean and snatch. Okay, so what I did with this matrix is I identified 3 requisite capacities that I felt I had control over with my programming. All right, those 3 being technique, speed, and strength. Very general categories. Okay. Underneath these categories, you can become more specific because, again, they're very general, like I'm about to show you. Under strength, you really have primary and assistance. Primary meaning the movement is really going to transfer the most to the competitive event, okay, or more closest to the goal of the program. Okay, so if I'm looking to build strength, I'm not going to be working on overheads. I'm not going to be implementing overhead squats. Strength for clean and snatch, I'm not going to be focusing too much of my time on presses and barbell rows. Is that clear? That should make sense. I'm going to focus my time primarily on clean grip deadlifts, snatch grip deadlifts, and front squats. Now I have back squat as an assistance exercise because it just does not fit my body too well. So those are some of the individual adjustments that you're allowed to make in your training. You don't need to stick to textbook definitions of what is primary and what is assistance. Sometimes if it doesn't fit your body, you're not going to want to load it often and heavy, you're going to break down. So that's not something you need to focus on primarily. Okay, speed. Speed's such a general category. In this instance, I have pull speed and catch speed. These are my own ways of defining these terms. Pretty much I have speed away from the floor, then I have speed back toward the floor to improve my catch. Exercise under speed away from the floor, I have clean pull, snatch pulls, power progressions, and hang power variations. In catch category, I have pocket and hang progressions. You could use blocks, pulls from blocks, or full lifts from blocks to improve speed under the bar, but I don't have those available, so I don't use them. Again, individual adjustments are appropriate and necessary. Then technique. I think technique is too general of a term. Okay, you're not just going to do more of the lifts to improve technique. You have to break down and create a system for improving technique. All right. I like to redefine technique as movement, availability, and control. Also, control is synonymous with organization. I'm going to talk about that in a second. All right. If I had to start with a beginner athlete, I'm not going to start by improving hip mobility or shoulder mobility. And the first thing I want to see is how do they RDL? What's their deadlift movement availability like? What does their front squat look like? I'm not going to front squat if they can't hinge. I'm not going to deadlift if they can't hinge, so we're going to start with front squat. Now they got that stuff. We're going to really try to go over the critical positions. Positions in weightlifting are everything. So position iso holds, there is not a better coaching exercise, then ISO holds to really learn critical positions of a lift. Then we can't go from a still frame or slow motion to gain speed, so we need something in the middle. Then we're just going to progress to those same movements with a slow tempo. Very simple. Then lifts to or from a pause. Do I start in the best position because it's easy to get into like a dynamic lift too early, dynamic start too early? Do I catch in a good position? So I'm going to hold the catch. All right, it's too easy to compensate through the catch sometimes because everything has to happen so fast. And again, I'm starting to speak specifically of weightlifting, but really you're going to be tailoring this category to whatever exercises are going to be incorporated if you're training for a sport or like a performance or physique-related goal like fat loss. Okay. Then the full lifts, obviously, and then I have the separate category for the corrective or restorative restoration of involved joints like ankle mobility, hip mobility, T-spine mobility, shoulder mobility, and organization. I like organization because I think it better depicts what has to happen at the shoulder, the communication or the teamwork between obviously the spine and the rib cage, the shoulder girdle and the arm, the head and the neck, how they have to organize in the right position to maintain that position. And the client or athlete also has to see the transfer of that organization from one exercise, okay, to the competitive lifts or the more important lifts. So a kettlebell overhead carry has to be instructed in the same way that they see the transfer or the similar cues as the catch position and the snatch. Organization. I love the word organization. All right. So you see that I have identified very simply requisite capacities or categories and then placed underneath them what I would use or where I would go. So if I want to improve strength, the majority of my program or time spent needs to be using these. If it's obviously you're always going to have a combination of goals incorporated into your program at the same time. You're not just going to use these exercises. You're going to be always trying to upgrade your technique and your efficiency. But if you're doing everything all at once, you're either a beginner working from the start, working with nothing, or you're really going nowhere. Okay, so it's an easy way to kind of assess or audit your own program based on the goal. So if the goal of your program is weightlifting, strength intensive, you better not be focusing too much on these exercises or spending too much time, honing in on technique. That should have already been taken care of. This can wait. Not to say you're not going to incorporate some, because you will, but not all of them. So audit your program using this matrix. Now, if I learn, say I'm on a website, and I learn a new, I'm like, that's a great exercise, and I can use that, and I have the equipment, I have the space available, and I really think that fits my goal right now. I'm in a speed phase. I'm trying to improve my catch. I'll spend the next 2 to 3 weeks really improving my catch on the clean. All right, and this is a great exercise that I'm not using. Well, if the exercise matches my category, my focus of the training phase, then I can incorporate it. But if I'm in a strength phase and I see a great catch exercise or speed under the bar exercise, then I'm not allowed to incorporate it just yet. We're gonna install it in the matrix. We're gonna let it marinate. We're gonna come to it when that's the goal. Now I'm going to show you how you can use the same matrix idea for a sport that's really more complicated than weightlifting. That's baseball. Okay. So when the performance goal is an exercise, when we have more of a sport or skill-related goal, how we still can use the same idea of this matrix and clarify for ourselves or direct ourselves toward the right programming strategies. The more you can identify, the better you identify requisite capacities of the sport, compare them to the current needs of the athlete, identify which methods fall under those goals, the program will at least begin to write itself. You need to make adjustments based on each individual, based on their current condition, personality. Okay, you're going to need to make individual adjustments. I don't want to say that as soon as you create this matrix, the program will just pop out at you. You don't have to do any work. Okay? You're going to need to tailor it per individual, but this is really going to help. Right? So, for a baseball middle infielder, for instance, right, we need to improve really the same capacities to begin. One thing I left out here is conditioning, because that's another lecture to begin with. So we're going to leave that out for now, okay? Because you're not only, as far as conditioning is concerned, you're not only conditioning for the sport. There's an element of conditioning to condition or training to train. And so that can get a little bit too complex for this video. We're going to keep the same requisite capacities. All right. I need to get my athletes stronger. I need to improve their speed. I'm going to show you how those operational definitions change a little bit. All right, and then I'm not improving baseball technique if I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm still going to be improving movement availability and control for involved exercises. Okay. So as I took you through the weightlifting example, all right, and for strength I had primary and assistance. Okay. You're probably going to have that for sport training. All right, if this became much more extensive. This is a very simple example. But more specifically for baseball, they move in different directions. All right, so where a weightlifter is all vertical force application, okay, I need to move linearly, like linearly being like in a straight line to first base, linearly, not talking about how force is applied into the ground. But yes, that's incorporated as well, as you'll see the exercise selections represents that. I need to move linearly, I need to move side to side, and then I need an element of rotational strength and power with lateral and linear strength contributing as well to rotation. But we do need an element of a specific rotational strength and speed. So I put these categories in between strength and speed because these exercises will support the categories in the middle here. So for linear, if I'm looking to improve some of these linear strength that supports linear movement on the field or linear speed, I'm going to be using old-fashioned exercises like deadlifts, narrow or Olympic stance squats, and single leg exercises. Rear foot elevated split squats, lunges, step-ups. You can throw sled pushes in there as well. All right, for lateral strength or strength exercises that transfer to lateral movement and somewhat to rotational power. Okay, force applied laterally this way instead of straight down to the ground. You're going to use wide stance squats. You can do back squat, box squat, front squat to a box, something that gets their feet substantially outside shoulder width and has the emphasis being on pushing out, driving the knees out. Where if I were to take one foot up off the ground, I would explode laterally one way. Okay, wider stance squats, sumo deadlifts, I call it sports sumo deadlift. And then some element of rotational strength, or strength training that is going to convert to rotational speed and performance on the field. Okay, primarily I used as an example band or cable, chop, lift, and rotation exercise variations. You can use landmine, and there would be, don't have enough space, but we can incorporate up another category for upper body exercise as well. That would fall under the category of assistance. Things like hip bridges, single leg deadlifts. Okay, other core exercises would be considered assistance, necessary, but again, assistance, they wouldn't fulfill these primary obligations. For speed, again, we're going to follow that linear, lateral, rotational categorization. So with linear speed, jumps, hops, bounds, Olympic lifts, again, what your athletes are technically competent with, what you professionally are competent coaching. We're not going to omit any of these exercises. Just depends, again, based on your athlete, based on yourself. Laterally, shuffles, crossovers, lateral bounds, resisted lateral bounds, and lateral sled work. And then rotational, you're going to have rotational medicine ball throws, which would fulfill our speed element of our training program. Technique, I left this up there because I think it's a good flow sheet to follow. Obviously, the exercises might change. Okay, I think hinging, deadlifting, and squatting is still going to be essential. I think you can use iso holds early in your program to learn technique, especially with new athletes. Under conditioned athletes coming off from a long competitive season, this is iso holds. Slow tempos are a great way to improve conditioning without loading up too soon. Okay, lifts to and from a pause. Again, that just doesn't need to be for O lifts. For weightlifting, you can use any of your exercises to make sure that your athletes own critical positions, compromising positions, especially full lifts. And then per athlete, per individual, you're going to make sure they're working on requisite involved joint mobility and organization. Using exercises in which they can understand the transfer of that stupid little clamshell, stupid little prone T, bench T exercise into, or see the transfer, see the future of the benefits of that exercise as they relate to these exercises, which I don't think they'll be confused as to what the benefits of these exercises are. Okay, so this is a baseball middle infielder. This could be a swimmer, a sprinter. This can be your middle-aged mom. It doesn't matter. You're going to come up with requisite capacities or training components that you need to improve. You're going to categorize your tools into these, under these umbrellas or into these small little toolboxes here. You're going to come up with your own flow sheets, what you feel as though is best for your athletes, best for your business, best for flow of the training environment. And then based on your athlete's goal, based on the time of their training, you should be able to pick the exercises that fit that goal. Obviously, you're not going to use everything. You're going to identify what the current goal is. If it's strength, if it's speed, you're going to be pulling more exercises from each individual category. If they're a beginner lifter, you're going to start using a lot of different exercises from this category. Again, these are just examples. I don't expect you to follow them. This is what I use. This is my go-to. Again, I gave you two examples: complicated baseball middle infielder, basic weightlifting. Hopefully, you can use these types of exercises to clarify what you feel is the most effective for your athletes, and most importantly, to prevent becoming distracted by all that noise online.